my wife and I just spent 4 weeks traveling across Europe, but today that is all coming to an end. But the silver lining is that for our return trip, we'll be flying with Singapore Airlines in business class. Now, I've flown Singapore Airlines before in economy, but never in business, so I'm excited to see how the product compares. A lot of people say that Singapore Airlines is one of the best airlines in the world, and you constantly hear about how they have the most amazing customer service and some of the nicest planes in the sky. So today we'll be putting that all to the test. Our flight today starts at Istanbul, where we'll be flying for 11 hours from Istanbul to Singapore before having a 14-hour layover and then heading back home to Melbourne. Both legs today will be on the exact same Airbus A350, but for the first flight, my wife and I will be sitting separately along the windows, whilst for the final leg, we'll be sitting together in the center seats. We start off today's journey in Istanbul Airport, and let me tell you that they take security seriously here, as they actually have 2 security checkpoints for travelers. One before you even enter the airport, and then second right after passport control. Now, this is our first time in Istanbul Airport, and all I've got to say is that this place is absolutely massive. Definitely leave time to walk to your gate because it will probably take longer than you expect. With our business class ticket today, we gain access to the Turkish Airlines business class lounge. Now, apparently, if you're a PPS Club, Krisflyer Elite Gold, or have Star Alliance Gold status, you can also access this lounge even when flying in economy, so it can get pretty busy. This lounge was definitely very busy when we arrived, but there were plenty of seating options to choose from. The food selection here was probably the highlight, with a wide range of freshly made Turkish dishes, international dishes, and dessert options. And compared to the restaurants we had during our time in Istanbul, these dishes weren't too shabby at all. They even had a golf simulator here to practice your swing. For the onboarding experience, we were greeted by the Singapore Airline crew, who welcomed my wife and I on board and showed us directly to our seats. I received a hot towel and got offered a welcome drink, for which I decided to choose the classic Singapore Sling. Not long after sitting down and getting comfortable, we were taxiing off the runway and into the air we went. Now, to help you stay connected on your next holiday, I'd like to introduce you to today's sponsor, Airalo. Airalo is a 100% digital eSIM store where you can get eSIM plans for 200 plus countries and regions to provide you with affordable data connectivity. They offer local, regional, and global eSIMs, so you can pick one that suits your travel needs. I've not only used the local Japan eSIM that Airalo offers during my 3-week holiday in Japan a few years ago, but also the regional Asia Link eSIM when I was traveling across Southeast Asia last year. For my trip later this year to South Korea and Japan, I'll also most likely use the Asia Link eSIM again, as it provides me with coverage to both countries. So once I land, I'll automatically have cell phone data ready to go. So install Airalo today so you can stay connected whenever you travel, and use my code RaymondLa3 to get $3 off your first eSIM. Now, the first impressions of the seat is that it is wide. Probably the widest seat that I've sat on. And that's because Singapore has a 1-to-1 seat configuration, which allows all passengers to have direct aisle access. The seats are also not staggered, so you sit directly behind the person in front of you, which is why you have such wide seats. The seats come with plenty of storage, with a compartment right next to your headrest with lights and ports, and next to that there's a closable compartment next to your seat that also includes the noise cancelling headphones and the tray table that pops open for meal service. In front of your entertainment console there's another storage compartment, and also a mirror if you want to see how awful you look after a long haul flight, or if you're just wanting to touch up on your makeup. The seat controls are on the opposite armrest, allowing you to control lights and your seat recline, and there's also a little footwell to put your shoes as well. Now, an interesting fact about this seat is that it doesn't actually recline into a bed like many other business class seats, rather it folds over into the bed instead. Because of the configuration, there isn't as much privacy to your neighbors, but there is a partition in the center console if you aren't traveling with someone you know. Now, one thing that Singapore Airlines does differently is that they don't hand out amenity kits like most other airlines. They only come available during flights over 6 hours, and you have to specifically request it from the flight attendants. Now, of course, my wife and I did ask for an amenity kit, and it was in collaboration with Lalabo. Apparently, this kit came out around last year, and it comprises of 3 different products: a hand pomade cream, face mist, and lip balm, all thoughtfully curated and placed in this waxed cotton canvas couch. If you're flying on business class with Singapore Airlines on a flight over 6 hours, definitely request for the amenity kit. Now, when it comes to dining, there's both a dining menu and a drinks menu for you to view, but for passengers traveling in first class, business class, or even premium economy, there's this thing called Book the Cook, which is kind of self-explanatory in the name, but essentially you can pre-book your meals. Now, it depends a little bit on the city that you're flying out of, so not all options will always be available, and the quality of the food can vary based on which city you depart of. We didn't have the option to book the cook for our leg from Istanbul to Singapore, but it was available on our Singapore to Melbourne leg. Now, if it is available, there's a humongous variety of different options, and the quality is meant to be on point. Shortly after reaching altitude, meal service started, and as with all Singapore Airlines flights, meal service started off with the classic Singaporean chicken satay as a canapé, and man, Asian food never tasted so good after traveling around Europe for a month. It followed closely with marinated prawns with stuffed aubergine salad, and then we went on to the mains where I got the braised beef short rib, and to wrap off the meal I ended it with the vanilla ice cream. Overall, the starters were excellent, but the braised beef short rib dish was just okay by my standards. Now, let's talk about in-flight entertainment. There is a massive entertainment screen, but it's unfortunately not touchscreen, so everything has to be controlled by the controller. They've got a super wide selection of movies, 4 live TV channels, including a sports channel, which was showing the French Open at the time, some podcasts, lots of different genres of music, and even full seasons of TV shows, including anime, and I ended up watching the full first season of Chainsaw Man whilst on my flight. Singapore Airlines now also offers unlimited complimentary Wi-Fi to not only first class and business class members, but also existing Krisflyer members, both in premium economy and economy. So yes, even when you're in economy, you can get unlimited complimentary Wi-Fi now. Just make sure you've signed up to Singapore's Krisflyer program before your flight, which is absolutely free to do. Next, let's talk about bedding. Now, when the seat is in its lie down position, you have to sleep diagonally because the footwell is off to the side and not immediately in front of you. Personally, this wasn't my favorite configuration because the footwell was much too small and it kind of curves towards the end, and my left foot kept hitting the side. The only way I could get comfortable is to sleep on my side. I think this is the type of seat that you just have to try for yourself because it seems that people either love it or hate it. My wife didn't have an issue at all with the bed, but obviously she's shorter than me, so if you're on the taller side, you will face similar issues to me. The toilets on board were actually much smaller than I was expecting, but it was well stocked with everything that you would need. The bins even automatically opened without you having to push down. So we're approaching Singapore and about to land soon, so let's talk about the customer service, because this is where Singapore Airlines is meant to truly shine. And I can confirm that the customer service experience was outstanding, and I definitely prefer it over our Qatar Q Suites experience. The crew were highly approachable, always with a smile on their face, and they've just got this really friendly vibe that just makes you want to smile back at them. Now, after landing and disembarking in Singapore, it was around 5 AM, so a little bit too early to leave, so we decided to check out the lounge. Now, when it comes to the lounges in Singapore, you'll have access to the Silver Kris Lounge, which is dedicated for people flying business class only, and not to be mistaken for the Krisflyer Gold Lounge. Those are reserved for Krisflyer Gold Elite members who are flying in economy. Because we did have a 14-hour layover, my wife and I did leave the airport to eat to our heart's content at the various hawker centers in Singapore, so when we arrived back to the lounge later, we did take advantage of the showers, which were super clean and well maintained. For our last leg back, my wife and I were sitting next to each other in the center of the plane, and I will say that because there's no overhead compartments in the center, it felt super open and airy sitting in the middle. On our last leg, we had our book the cook meals, and I opted for the Singaporean laksa, and man, this absolutely hit the spot. It was aromatic, flavorful, had huge prawns and a hard-boiled egg as well. It was probably one of the best in-flight meals I've ever had. If you ever do get to book the cook, I highly recommend this dish. So my final thoughts on Singapore Airlines business class. I thought that the soft products like the customer service, amenity kit, food and drink options were all excellent. The bed definitely wasn't my favorite as the footwell was much too cramped and sleeping on an angle took a while to get used to. I definitely prefer the seating and privacy of Qatar Q suites, but would I fly Singapore Airlines business class again? Absolutely I would. And finally, how much did we book this flight? Well, per person, we booked this flight for 99,000 Krisflyer miles, plus around $90 in taxes and fees. Yep, you heard that right. We only paid $90 for this business class flight that would have otherwise cost over $5,000. And if you want to learn how, then check out this video right here.